The transformation obsession. The transformation. It had never been an accident. She was more than she appeared. She was a witch, a predator hiding beneath beauty and allure. He tried to run, but his own body, her body, felt weak, drained. Sophie, no, Marcus, watched with a smirk, effortlessly slipping into his old skin, into his old life. And as she turned to leave, she left him with one final, chilling sentence. "Enjoy your new life, Sophie. I know I will." Marcus, now forever Sophie, screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the night. No one looked. No one cared. And in the end, he realized the truth. He had wanted to become her. And now he always would be. Part 1, The Awakening. The first morning was the worst. Marcus awoke in Sophie's apartment, disoriented by the unfamiliar weight of hair cascading over his shoulders, the softness of the silk pillowcase against his cheek. For a blissful moment, he thought it had all been a nightmare, until he caught sight of his reflection in the vanity mirror across the room. Sophie's face stared back. His face now. He stumbled to the bathroom, bile rising in his throat. The mirror there only confirmed the horror. Sophie's elegant features, her pale skin, her wide green eyes, all looking back at him with his own expressions of panic and disgust. He clutched the edge of the sink, knuckles whitening, and heaved, but nothing came up. Marcus had first seen Sophie 3 months ago, at a gallery opening downtown. She had been standing alone before a massive abstract painting, seeming somehow both part of the crowd and apart from it. Something about her had immediately captivated him. Not just her beauty, which was considerable, but a certain quality of otherness. As though she knew secrets no one else did. He had approached her, offered her a glass of champagne. She had accepted with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What do you see in it?" she had asked, nodding toward the painting. "Chaos," he'd replied. "Beautiful chaos." "Interesting," she'd said. "I see transformation." Now, standing in her bathroom, his bathroom, he remembered that exchange with agonizing clarity. Transformation. Of course that was what she had seen. She had been planning this from the very start. After that first meeting, he had become obsessed with her. There was no other word for it. He found excuses to run into her, learned her routines, her habits, asked her out for coffee, then dinner. She had seemed flattered, if slightly amused, by his attention. Their conversations had been strange, circling topics of identity, of the self, of what it meant to truly know another person. "Do you ever wish you could be someone else?" she had asked him once, those green eyes studying him over the rim of her wineglass. "No," he had lied. "I'm perfectly content with who I am." Her smile had been knowing, Marcus. Everyone wants to escape themselves sometimes. And he had lied. The truth he couldn't admit even to himself until now, was that he had been profoundly dissatisfied with his life, with his career as a mid-level marketing executive, with his body, which never seemed to look right, no matter how many hours he spent at the gym, with the endless, exhausting performance of masculinity. But Sophie seemed so comfortable in her skin, so self-possessed, so free, and now he was trapped in her body, in her life, with no idea how to get back. He forced himself to shower, the sensation of water running over unfamiliar curves and contours nearly sending him into another panic attack. He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the warmth, on the simple mechanics of washing. He couldn't look down. Not yet. Clean but still shaken, he wrapped himself in a towel and forced himself to face the next challenge: clothes. Sophie's closet was meticulously organized, every item carefully sorted by type and color. It overwhelmed him. Skirts, dresses, blouses, pants, sweaters, all in fabrics he didn't recognize and styles he didn't understand. How had he never noticed how complicated women's clothing was? The sheer variety of options was paralyzing. In the end, he grabbed the simplest thing he could find: black leggings and an oversized gray sweater. He dressed mechanically, trying not to think about the unfamiliar undergarments, the strange sensation of fabric against skin that was not his own. Days passed in a fog. He called in sick to Sophie's job. Something in publishing, he gathered from the emails on her laptop. He barely ate, barely slept. He tried calling his own number repeatedly, but it always went to voicemail. He even went to his apartment building once, standing across the street in the rain for hours, but never caught a glimpse of himself, of Sophie wearing his face, his life. A week into his new existence, Sophie's phone rang. The screen showed a name, Emma. "Sophie, where have you been?" The voice was concerned, familiar in the way of old friends. "You missed book club, and you didn't respond to any of my texts. Are you okay?" "I'm sick," Marcus managed, still struggling with the higher pitch of Sophie's voice. "You sound terrible," Emma said. "I'm coming over. I'll bring soup from that Thai place you like." Before Marcus could protest, she had hung up. Panic swept through him. He looked around the apartment, Sophie's apartment, which he had barely ventured out of since that night. Clothes strewn about, takeout containers piling up, a general air of neglect that he was certain the real Sophie would never have tolerated. He had an hour, maybe less, before Emma arrived. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, he began cleaning, throwing garbage into bags, straightening furniture, opening windows to air out the stale smell. The activity felt good, purposeful. The first time since the change that he'd felt anything but numb horror. When the doorbell rang, the apartment was presentable, and Marcus had changed into a clean outfit, still leggings, but paired with a soft blue sweater he'd found hanging on the back of a chair. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Emma was about Sophie's age, with a curly bob of dark hair and warm brown eyes that immediately widened in surprise. "Wow," she said, stepping inside with a paper bag that smelled deliciously of lemongrass and coconut. "You look different." Marcus froze. Could she tell? Could she somehow sense that he wasn't Sophie? "Your hair," Emma continued, tilting her head. "And are those new leggings? I've been trying to get you to wear color for years." Marcus touched his Sophie's hair self-consciously. He had pulled it back into a simple ponytail, not knowing what else to do with it. The leggings, he now noticed, were not black as he'd thought, but a very deep blue. "Just trying something new," he managed. Emma grinned. "Well, it suits you. You look less severe. I mean, don't get me wrong, your whole minimalist capsule wardrobe thing is very chic, but sometimes I think you forget that you're 29, not 50. She moved to the kitchen with the ease of someone who had been there many times before, pulling out bowls and spoons without needing to ask where they were. Marcus followed, trying to mimic the way Sophie might move, might talk. "So," Emma said as they sat down to eat, "what's really going on? And don't say just sick. I know you, Soph. Something's up." The genuine concern in her voice almost broke him. This woman cared about Sophie, really cared. And Sophie had abandoned her friend just as thoroughly as she had stolen Marcus's life. He hesitated, then decided on a version of the truth. "I met someone. It didn't end well." Emma's eyes softened. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Recent?" "Very. Do you want to talk about it?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet, but thanks for coming over. I think I needed company more than I realized." Emma stayed for hours. They watched a movie, something French with subtitles that Emma clearly expected Sophie to love, and talked. Or rather, Emma talked, and Marcus listened, soaking up information about Sophie's life like a sponge. Sophie had been an editor at a small but prestigious publishing house. She lived alone and had for years after a bad breakup with someone named David. She had a small circle of close friends, most of whom she'd known since college. She was respected at work, but not particularly well liked. "Because you don't suffer fools," Emma said with admiration. By the time Emma left, with a promise to check in tomorrow, Marcus felt both overwhelmed and oddly comforted. There was a life here, Sophie's life, structured and complete, a life he could step into if he could just figure out how. That night, standing before the full-length mirror in Sophie's bedroom, he really looked at himself, at his new self, for the first time. Sophie was beautiful, yes, but in a controlled, almost austere way. Her body was slender but strong, her posture impeccable. Her wardrobe, which he had begun to explore more thoroughly after Emma's visit, reflected the same aesthetic: quality over quantity, function over frivolity, muted colors, and clean lines. It was the wardrobe of someone who wanted to be taken seriously, who perhaps had not been once. But as Marcus looked at his reflection, at the blue sweater that brought out flecks of color in Sophie's green eyes, at the way the ponytail softened her sharp jawline, he wondered what would happen if he made different choices. Part 2. The Metamorphosis. 2 weeks after the transformation, Marcus returned to Sophie's job. The anxiety of that first morning was almost unbearable. Walking into an office where everyone knew Sophie, where they expected him to know things he couldn't possibly know. But to his surprise, he managed. Sophie's email history was comprehensive, her calendar meticulously detailed. Her colleagues, while respectful, were not particularly friendly, which meant minimal small talk to navigate. Sophie, it seemed, had been extremely good at her job. The manuscripts on her desk were marked up with precise, insightful notes. Her correspondence with authors was firm but encouraging. Marcus, who had always had a way with words, even if his marketing career had stifled it, found himself slowly growing into the role. And as he grew more comfortable at work, he began to experiment more deliberately with Sophie's appearance. It started small, a different shade of lipstick from the neat row on her vanity, styling her hair loose instead of in its usual sleek chignon, a pair of earrings he found in a box labeled "Mom's Too Flashy" that dangled and caught the light. People noticed. Sophie's assistant did a double take when he wore a burgundy blouse instead of the usual white or beige. A normally taciturn author brightened when he greeted her wearing jade earrings that matched her eyes. Emma was delighted, texting him daily encouragement, "Loving the new you," and "Who knew you had these curves? That dress is everything." One evening, about a month after the transformation, Marcus found himself in a part of Sophie's closet he had not fully explored before, the back corner, where items were stored in garment bags and boxes. Most seemed to be special occasion wear or season-specific pieces, but one box, pushed far to the back, contained something else entirely. Clothes that were nothing like Sophie's usual style. A leather jacket, worn soft with age, jeans with rips at the knees, band t-shirts faded from many washes, a pair of combat boots, and at the very bottom, a photo album. The pictures showed a younger Sophie, college-aged, he guessed, with a different look entirely. Her hair was shorter, with purple streaks. She wore dark makeup and the clothes from the box. In most photos, she was with a group of friends, looking happy in a way that the Sophie he had known, the Sophie who had stolen his life, never quite had. There were other boxes, too. One contained floral dresses and delicate blouses, more feminine than anything in Sophie's current rotation, but still elegant. Another held what could only be described as club wear: sequined tops, a shockingly short silver dress, platform heels. It was like discovering archaeological evidence of past lives, lives Sophie had tried on and discarded on her way to becoming the woman who had so entranced him, the woman who had ultimately consumed him. The next day, Marcus wore the leather jacket to work. The office practically buzzed with shock. Sophie's assistant nearly spilled coffee when he walked in. The head of the department did a double take in the hallway. "Casual Friday came early?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "Just felt like a change," Marcus replied, discovering to his delight that Sophie's voice could contain notes of warmth he had never heard her use. He paired the jacket with one of Sophie's typical pencil skirts and a simple top, creating a juxtaposition that somehow worked. Edgy yet professional, unexpected yet intentional. By lunchtime, 3 different people had complimented him. That weekend, Marcus invited Emma over to help him clean out the closet. "Finally," she exclaimed, diving into the task with enthusiasm. "I've been telling you for years that half this stuff doesn't make you happy." Together, they sorted through Sophie's wardrobe. The most severe pieces, the ones that felt like armor rather than clothing, went into donation bags. The hidden treasures from the back of the closet came forward. Emma watched with delight as Marcus tried on combination after combination, mixing Sophie's professional pieces with her more adventurous past lives. "It's like watching a butterfly emerge from a cocoon," Emma said, eyes bright with unshed tears. "I don't know what prompted this change, Soph, but it's like you're finally letting yourself be seen." And wasn't that ironic? Marcus thought later, as he admired his reflection in a green dress that made Sophie's eyes look like emeralds. He had spent his whole life feeling invisible, trapped in a body and identity that never felt quite right. Now, wearing someone else's skin, he was finally being seen. Part 3. The Confrontation. 3 months after the transformation, Marcus had settled into a rhythm. He went to work as Sophie, edited manuscripts, attended meetings. He socialized with Sophie's friends, who all remarked on his glow-up and newfound confidence. He explored the city with fresh eyes, discovering places Sophie had never gone, foods she had never tried. He still thought of himself as Marcus, but increasingly he thought of Sophie's body as his own. The initial dissociation had faded. He no longer startled at the sight of delicate hands where his broader ones had been. No longer felt like he was wearing a costume when he put on a dress or heels. In fact, he had grown to love certain aspects of his new physical form. The grace of Sophie's long fingers, perfect for the piano he had taken up again after a decade's hiatus. The strength in her legs, which carried him on long walks through the city. The way clothes draped and moved on her frame, a canvas for self-expression he had never allowed himself in his old life. It was on one of these walks through a neighborhood he had never visited as himself that he saw himself, his old self, his old body. Walking down the street with confident strides, wearing a suit he didn't recognize but which fit his former body perfectly. Sophie. Before he could think better of it, Marcus was following her, following himself down the street, heart pounding so loudly he was certain everyone could hear it. Sophie, wearing his body, entered a high-end restaurant. Through the window, Marcus watched as she was greeted warmly by the host, escorted to a table where a stunning woman waited. They kissed, brief but intimate. Marcus stood frozen on the sidewalk, a storm of emotions ripping through him. Rage, that was expected. She had stolen his life and was clearly enjoying it. But beneath the rage was something else. Envy. Not for his old life, but for the ease with which Sophie had stepped into a new one. While he had spent weeks fumbling through her closet, learning her job, trying to piece together who she was, Sophie had seamlessly become Marcus. Had even, apparently, found romantic happiness, something that had eluded the real Marcus for years. He wasn't sure how long he stood there watching, but eventually Sophie looked up and directly out the window. Their eyes met, his old eyes, now hers locking with his new eyes, formerly hers. She smiled, raised her glass in a mocking toast, and turned her attention back to her companion. It was too much. Marcus pushed into the restaurant, ignoring the host's protests, and approached the table. "Sophie," he said, her voice, shaking with emotion. "I'm sorry," Sophie said in his deeper tones, voice perfectly pleasant but eyes cold as ice. "I think you have me confused with someone else. My name is Marcus." The woman across from her looked between them, confused. "Marcus? Who is this?" "No one important," Sophie said smoothly. "An old acquaintance. Would you excuse us for just a moment, Vanessa?" She rose, using his body with a grace Marcus had never managed, and guided him firmly by the elbow to a quiet corner near the restrooms. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, all pretense of civility gone. "What am I doing? What are you doing? That's my body, my life." Sophie's laugh, using his vocal cords, was bitter. "Your life? The life you were wasting? The body you never appreciated? You can't just—" "But I did, and from the looks of it," she said, eyes raking over him in a way that made his skin prickle, "you're not doing so badly yourself. Nice jacket. I forgot I still had that old thing." "Change us back," Marcus demanded, though even as he said it, he wasn't entirely sure he meant it. Sophie's smile was knowing. "You don't want that. Not really. You don't know what I want." "Don't I? I've been watching you for months, Marcus. I saw how you looked at me. Not with desire, with envy. You never wanted to have me. You wanted to be me." The words hit with the force of truth. Hadn't he admired her self-possession, her confidence, the way she moved through the world so assuredly? Hadn't he been drawn to her because she seemed to embody something he lacked? "And you?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "What did you want?" Something flickered across his old face, a sadness, perhaps, or a longing. "Freedom," Sophie said simply, "the freedom that comes with being seen the way men are seen, taken seriously, given opportunities, not having every choice, every outfit, every word scrutinized and judged." For a moment they stood in silence, two people wearing each other's lives like borrowed coats. "Are you happy?" Marcus finally asked. "As me?" Sophie considered this. "Getting there. You had laid some decent groundwork, career-wise, though your apartment needed a complete overhaul and your networking skills were abysmal." Despite everything, Marcus laughed. It was true, he had been hopeless at networking. "And you?" Sophie asked, a genuine curiosity in her tone. "Are you happy as me?" The question gave him pause. Was he? These months had been confusing, frightening, disorienting, but they had also been illuminating, freeing in their way. He had discovered aspects of himself, his creativity, his eye for beauty, his capacity for reinvention, that had been dormant in his old life. "I'm getting there," he echoed. Sophie nodded as though this confirmed something she had suspected. "You've changed me," she observed. "My appearance, my style. Emma says you've been going out more trying new things." "And you've changed me too," Marcus replied, nodding toward the elegant suit, the confident posture. "Vanessa seems. She is. Much better match than that disaster Caroline you were seeing." Marcus winced. She wasn't wrong about Caroline. Silence fell between them again, but different this time. Less hostile, almost companionable. "So what now?" Marcus finally asked. "Now," Sophie said, straightening her tie, "I go back to my date, and you go back to your life. My former life. But this is permanent, Marcus. The spell doesn't reverse. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, we're stuck as we are." "Spell," Marcus repeated. "So you really are a witch, among other things." She smiled, an expression that sat strangely on his old features. "We all have our secrets." She turned to go, then paused. "That green dress," she said, not looking back at him. "The one in the back of the closet. I never had the courage to wear it. You should." And then she was gone, walking back to the table, to Vanessa, to the life that had once been his. Marcus stood still for a long moment, processing. Then he walked out of the restaurant, into the cool evening air, and decided to take the long way home. Sophie's apartment. His apartment now. As he walked, he thought about choices, about identity, about the strange, unpredictable paths that life could take. Had Sophie done him a favor in her selfish way? Had she somehow seen in him a kindred spirit, someone else who didn't quite fit in their assigned life? Or was he just trying to find meaning in what had been nothing more than a magical crime? He didn't have answers. Perhaps he never would. But as he passed a shop window and caught a glimpse of his reflection, of Sophie's face with his expressions, Sophie's body in clothes she would never have chosen, Sophie's life being lived by someone else entirely, he felt a peculiar sense of peace settle over him. When he got home, he went straight to the closet and found the green dress Sophie had mentioned. It was beautiful, emerald silk that seemed to catch and hold the light. He put it on, watching in the mirror as it transformed him yet again. "Enjoy your new life, Sophie," he whispered to his reflection, echoing the words that had haunted him for months. But this time they didn't feel like a curse. They felt like permission. Part 4. The Integration. 6 months after the transformation, Marcus could barely remember what it felt like to be in his old body. The new rhythms of his life as Sophie had become second nature. The morning skincare routine, the way he moved in heels, the cadence of Sophie's voice that he had learned to modulate with his own inflections. His apartment had undergone a transformation of its own. The stark minimalism had given way to something warmer, more eclectic. Vintage finds from weekend flea market excursions with Emma. Artwork from local artists he'd discovered while exploring neighborhoods Sophie had never visited. Plants that brought life to corners that had previously felt sterile. Work had changed, too. Initially, Mark has been careful to maintain Sophie's editorial style, her professional persona. But gradually, he had begun to make his mark. His background in marketing gave him insights into what might sell, what might resonate with readers. He advocated for manuscripts Sophie might have dismissed, stories with more heart, more messiness, more authenticity. To his surprise, his colleagues responded positively. Authors appreciated his more collaborative approach. The publisher noticed the success of his acquisitions. 6 months in, Marcus, as Sophie, received a promotion. "I always knew you had it in you," Sophie's boss had said during the announcement. "You just needed to let that brilliant mind of yours work with your heart, not against it." The fashion evolution continued as well. From Sophie's hidden boxes, Marcus had resurrected pieces of her past selves, combining them with new purchases that reflected his own developing aesthetic. The severe editor was gone. In her place was someone more vibrant, more adventurous, more comfortable in her skin. And people noticed. Not just Emma and colleagues, but strangers, the barista who flirted with him, the designer at a boutique who asked if he'd ever modeled, the older woman on the subway who complimented his outfit and said, "You look so happy, dear. It suits you." It was one of these strangers who eventually became something more. Alexis taught art history at the university. They met at a gallery opening. Ironic, Marcus thought, considering how his journey with Sophie had begun. Alexis had approached him, asked his opinion on an installation piece that looked like a tornado of metal and fabric frozen in time. "What do you see in it?" she'd asked. Marcus had smiled, remembering his first exchange with Sophie. "Transformation," he'd replied. Alexis had smiled back. "Interesting. I see freedom." Their first date had been the following week. Museum, then dinner, then drinks that stretched into hours of conversation. Marcus had been nervous. He'd never dated as Sophie, had no idea how to navigate romantic attraction in this new body, this new life. But Alexis made it easy. She was warm, curious, attentive in a way that made Marcus feel truly seen. By the third date, he was comfortable enough to kiss her goodnight. By the fifth, they were spending entire weekends together, talking about everything from art to politics to their childhoods. Marcus crafted a version of his past that was close enough to Sophie's to be believable, but with the emotional truths of his own history woven in. "You've changed since we met," Alexis observed one lazy Sunday morning, her head on his chest. "Not in a bad way. You seem more settled in yourself." Marcus ran his fingers through her hair, considering this. "I think I am. For a long time, I felt like I was playing a role, wearing a costume. Now it feels like I've grown into myself." "I know what you mean," Alexis said. "I spent my 20s trying to be who everyone expected. My 30s have been about discovering who I actually am." "And who is that?" Marcus asked. "Still figuring it out," she laughed. "But I think she likes vintage jazz, modern arts, and editors with green eyes." The relationship with Alexis brought a kind of joy Marcus had never experienced before. Not in his old life, not in his early days as Sophie. It was the joy of being loved as the person he had become, not the person he had been expected to be. But as his new life flourished, Marcus couldn't help wondering about his old one. He hadn't seen Sophie, the Sophie wearing his body, since their confrontation at the restaurant. Sometimes he would catch himself scanning crowds, looking for his old self, wondering what she was doing with the life she had stolen. Had she kept his job? Maintained his friendships? Did she ever think of him, of the strange bond they now shared as the only two people in the world who knew their secret? The answer came, unexpectedly, through social media. Marcus rarely checked Sophie's accounts. They had been as austere as the rest of her life, all carefully curated professional posts and occasional artful photos of architecture or nature. But one evening, bored while waiting for Alexis to finish a faculty meeting, he scrolled through Instagram and found a notification. A tag. In a photo posted by someone named @VanessaDelMar. The photoed his old self, Sophie in his body, smiling broadly beside the woman from the restaurant. They were on a beach at sunset, champagne glasses raised in a toast. The caption read, "She said yes, engaged future wife, love wins." Marcus stared at the image, an indecipherable tangle of emotions rising in his chest. His old face looked happier than he could ever remember being in that body. More relaxed. More confident. Sophie had reshaped his physical self just as thoroughly as he had reshaped hers. Better haircut, clothes that actually fit, posture that displayed confidence rather than concealed insecurity. Without thinking, he tapped out a comment. "Congratulations, you look happy." He didn't expect a response. But that evening, as he was making dinner, Sophie's phone pinged with a direct message. "We should talk. Coffee? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. The place on Maple with the blue awning." Marcus recognized the location, a small cafe in a neighborhood halfway between his old apartment and Sophie's, neutral territory. He showed up 10 minutes early, ordered a cappuccino, and waited. At precisely 2 p.m., the door opened, and there was Sophie, wearing his face, his body, but moving with a confidence he never had. "Sophie," he said as she sat down across from him. "Marcus," she replied, then smiled. "Though I suppose we should use our new names, shouldn't we?" "I suppose we should. Marcus?" He, the person across from him nodded, studying his face. "You look good. Better than I did in that body, if I'm honest." "I was thinking the same about you," Marcus admitted. There was an awkward silence, both of them sipping their coffees, taking each other in. "Congratulations," Marcus finally said. "On your engagement." Sophie, now Marcus, smiled, and the expression transformed his old face into something almost unrecognizable, happier, lighter. "Thank you. She's incredible. Nothing I ever expected to find." "I know what you mean," Marcus said. "I'm seeing someone, too. It's serious." "The art history professor? She seems lovely. Your Instagram is practically a shrine." Marcus blinked, surprised. You've been following me? Of course, wouldn't you, in my position? She shrugged. I was curious to see what you'd do with my life. And? What do you think? He seemed to consider this carefully. I think you've made it better, more authentic. I spent so long hiding behind a carefully constructed image, perfect editor, perfect apartment, perfect clothes, but I was never happy. You found a way to be real. Marcus nodded slowly. Your body, my body now, it never felt like a costume to be worn, more like a home waiting to be decorated. Sophie laughed, the sound strange coming from his old vocal cords. Poetic. You always did have a way with words. She paused, then added more quietly, I'm sorry, for how I did it. Not for doing it, but for not giving you a choice. Would I have said yes if you'd asked? Would I if our positions had been reversed? They looked at each other for a long moment, understanding passing between them. So, Marcus finally said, you're getting married. What's next? Suburbs? Kids? The whole package? Actually, Sophie said, leaning forward, we're moving to London. Vanessa got an offer too good to refuse, and I can work remotely. Fresh start. New city. She hesitated, then added, that's partly why I wanted to see you, to say goodbye, I suppose, and to make sure. That I'm okay? Marcus finished for her. I am, more than okay. Sophie nodded, relief evident in her expression. Good, that's good. What about my family? Marcus asked suddenly. My parents, my sister? I've kept in touch, minimal, but enough. They think you are just very busy. I send gifts on appropriate occasions. She paused. They're nice people, better than mine were. I haven't contacted your family at all, Marcus admitted. Good, Sophie said firmly. Keep it that way. There's a reason I moved 3,000 miles from them. Another silence, but comfortable this time. Do you ever regret it? Marcus finally asked. The switch? Sophie considered this, looking out the window at the people passing by. No, she said eventually. It was selfish and desperate and probably unforgivable. But no, I don't regret it. She turned back to him. Do you? Regret being the victim of my magic? Marcus thought about his life now, about the freedom he'd found in Sophie's body, the joy of reinvention, the relationship with Alexis, the career that fulfilled him in ways his old one never had. No, he said honestly, I don't regret it either. Something like understanding passed between them, a recognition that they had both, in their way, gotten exactly what they needed. I should go, Sophie said eventually. Packing to do. Flights to book. Of course. She stood to leave, then hesitated. One last thing, that green dress. Did you ever wear it? Marcus smiled. I did, on my third date with Alexis. It was perfect. Sophie nodded, satisfied. I always knew it would be, just never on me. She extended her hand, his old hand. Goodbye, Sophie. Marcus took it, the sensation surreal. Goodbye, Marcus. Be happy. You too. And then she was gone, walking out the door with the easy confidence of someone who had finally found their place in the world. Marcus sat for a while longer, watching the people passing by outside, thinking about paths taken and not taken, about identity and transformation, about the strange magic that had given them both second chances. Then he pulled out Sophie's phone, his phone now, and texted Alexis. Dinner tonight? I have something important to ask you. As he waited for her reply, Marcus caught his reflection in the cafe window. Sophie's face smiled back at him, but the smile was entirely his own. Part V. The Revelation. 1 year to the day after the transformation, Marcus stood in front of the full-length mirror in what had once been Sophie's bedroom. The room, like the rest of the apartment, had been thoroughly transformed. Gone were the stark white walls and minimalist furniture. In their place were warm terracotta tones, artwork collected from local artists, photographs of his new life with Alexis. He was wearing the green dress. The dress Sophie had never had the courage to wear herself. It still fit perfectly, the silk draping elegantly over the curves he had long since accepted as his own. Tonight was special. 1 year since his life had changed completely. 6 months since Sophie, in his old body, had moved to London with her fiancé. 3 months since Alexis had moved in, bringing her collection of art books and vintage record player and the chaotic energy that had completed the transformation of the apartment from Sophie's sterile showcase to their eclectic, lived-in home. And tonight, he had decided, was the night he would tell Alexis the truth. Not all of it. He wasn't sure anyone could believe all of it without witnessing it firsthand. But enough. A version of the truth that she might accept. that they had met before when he was someone else, that he had undergone a could you finish this story? Transformation that had led him to discover who he truly was. With a final check of his reflection, Marcus adjusted the neckline of the dress and stepped back to admire the way the fabric shimmered under the soft light. Confidence washed over him, bolstered by the changes he had embraced. He was not just wearing Sophie's skin. He was living her life with a newfound authenticity that resonated deep within him. As he made his way to the kitchen, he heard the sounds of Alexis humming, her voice filling the space as she prepared their anniversary dinner. The aroma of rosemary and garlic wafted through the air, making his stomach flutter with anticipation. He stopped for a moment, listening, letting the music of their shared life envelop him. He took a breath and entered the kitchen. Alexis looked up, and her face broke into a warm smile that lit up the room. "You look stunning," she said, placing a hand on her hip. "That dress is gorgeous." "Thank you," Marcus replied, his heart racing as he prepared to share his secret. "I wanted to look special tonight." "Mission accomplished," Alexis grinned, her eyes shining with admiration. "I can't believe it's been a year. Feels like just yesterday when we met." "Yes," Marcus said, swallowing his nerves. "There's something I need to talk to you about. Something important." Alexis cocked her head slightly, sensing the shift in his demeanor. "What's on your mind?" "Do you remember when we first met at the gallery?" he asked, trying to gauge her reaction. "Of course," she replied with a laugh. "You had such a captivating view of the artwork. I thought it was so refreshing. Most people just want to talk about the surface, but you got right into the deeper meanings." "That's part of who I am now," Marcus said, nervously toying with the hem of the dress. "But it's only part of my story." "Okay." Alexis frowned slightly, concerned. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, Marcus decided to reveal his truth, the version he hoped would bridge their lives. "I wasn't always this me. That is, I wasn't always Sophie. I mean, I was before all of this, but not in the way you think." The confusion in Alexis's eyes deepened. "What do you mean?" "I was Marcus. I lived my life as a man for years before something changed. I've transformed, and the person you know as Sophie is really my second chance." Alexis stared at him, processing his words. "Are you saying you're a different person?" "Yes," he replied, his voice steady and earnest. "Sophie and I switched lives. I saw the beauty in her world, the things I could never see before. But she took my identity with her when she left, and I had to figure out how to live as her. A year ago, I was in a completely different life, in my old body. I was unhappy, unfulfilled, but Sophie, now in my form, was finally embracing who she was meant to be." Silence filled the kitchen as Alexis absorbed his confession. Marcus took a step toward her, needing her to understand. "I'm still me, but I'm also so much more now. I found freedom in Sophie's life that I never had before." A mixture of astonishment and realization washed over Alexis's face, and for a moment he feared he had overwhelmed her. "That doesn't make any sense." "There was magic involved," he said, feeling an unusual sense of urgency. "It's hard to believe, but it's true. I needed to share it with you. You deserve to know who you're truly with." "But what if this is all? What if you're just using Sophie's life to escape your own?" she questioned, a hint of hurt lacing her voice. Marcus shook his head, his chest tightening with resolve. "No, this isn't an escape. This is me finding my place, my truth, by living through her experiences. The dress, this apartment, my new friendships, none of it is fake. It's built on authenticity. I've grown into Sophie, not just worn her. And now, I want to share my truth with you. I love you, Alexis. I'm ready to be fully real with you." Tension hung in the air, thick and wordless, as Marcus waited for Alexis to respond. Her wide eyes softened, and she reached out, placing her hand over his. "I'm not saying I fully understand, but I hate the thought of you feeling like you need to hide anything from me, even this. You're amazing just as you are." "Really?" he asked, a swell of emotion catching in his throat. "Yeah," she nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. "And if you are here now because you chose to be, then it's your choice to live as Sophie. You deserve this. You deserve to be happy." They stood there in the kitchen, warmth enveloping them as the weight of the last year settled into a reassuring bond. It was the first moment of clarity Marcus had since this incredible journey began, and he recognized that they both carried the pieces of their past in a way that molded their present. I'm in love with you, Marcus, Alexis said softly, the sincerity in her tone wrapping around him like a warm hug. You can always be honest with me, whatever the truth is. His heart soared at the affirmation. Thank you for accepting me. They leaned in and shared a kiss, a promise of trust that bound their disparate life experiences into a shared narrative. Then Alexis stepped back, a mischievous smile crossing her face. Now, how about we celebrate this transformation with a celebratory toast? Definitely. Marcus grinned, his spirits lifted. The evening continued with laughter echoing through the kitchen as they enjoyed dinner and reveled in the life they had built together. As the sun set and twinkling lights emerged, Marcus felt the weight of the past give way to an exhilarating sense of hope for the future. In every reflection he passed, he saw Sophie's beauty and grace, but now it was intertwined with his identity, a beautiful tapestry of contradictions he had learned to embrace. Together with Alexis, he entered the next chapter of his life, fully ready to explore the paths they would carve together. With an exhilarating breath, Marcus thought about transformation. Not just in bodies, but in hearts, in souls. Tonight he would raise a glass to love, acceptance, and the beautifully complex journey of becoming.